All right, y'all, we are going to get started. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you enjoyed that music chosen by our speaker. That definitely got me in a good mood. My name is Danielle Barnes. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm so glad to welcome you to our Speaker Stories event. If you haven't been to a Speaker Stories before, I wanted to share a little bit about why we do this event and the format before introducing our speaker. So Women Talk Design, it's really our mission to help elevate the voices of women and non-binary folks. We want to see them on the conference stage. We want to hear their ideas. We want to read their books. And so we do a couple different things to encourage that. One of them is through our speaker directory. So you can go to womentalkdesign.com and see speakers from all over the world, Michal being one of them. You can also attend one of our events or workshops that are really designed to encourage more people to raise their hands to speak and to make sure that you have the tools and resources to be able to do so. And then finally, we have a digital community space that if you're not a part of, I recommend you join. It's a private space for women and non-binary folks to be able to meet one another, share ideas, share speaking opportunities, ask questions, and offer support. And so this event specifically is a really special one because we have a chance to really get to hear more about the journey of public speaking from one of our speakers. Everyone has different ways of how they got started, different motivations for speaking, different ways of preparing their talks. And so we really want to be able to uncover that and share that with the community so that you can hear something that maybe resonates with you or get some ideas for your own speaking practice. So the way that this is going to work, I'll introduce our speaker. I have some questions to get us started, but really we'd love to hear from you. And we're a small group today, so everyone will have a chance to share their questions. You can use the raise hand feature or you can type in the chat, depending if you want to ask it out loud or you want me to ask it on your behalf. And then at the end, if you want to stick around, we normally save the last 15 minutes to give people who are here a chance to connect with one another. So I know a lot of you have your videos off right now, which is fine, but if you want to stick around at the end and connect in smaller groups and be able to meet people that are here, we have some prompts to get you started to help start that conversation. A couple other quick logistics before we get started. This is being recorded. We like to record this and we work on a recap so that we can continue to share out the stories and advice from this event. And you will also say that it says live streaming. We're not actually live streaming it right now. That's a automated captioning tool with Otter that we use. So if you want to follow along with captions, you can click on that. You can also look at the live transcript from Zoom, but just wanted to give you a heads up on what that is. So again, I encourage you to say hello in the chat if you haven't already. Ask your questions there. And without further ado, I am thrilled to introduce our speaker. Michal Ziso is an architect, space architect, an advisory board member on Moons to Mars VC, and the founder of and CEO of Ziso, an architecture and innovation lab that imagines, designs, and creates the future of the built environment. And being a space architect, Michal researches and designs living environments for humans outside of planet Earth, focusing on human-centered and inclusive design, using the extreme environments in space as creative tools and innovation. I really encourage y'all to check out her bio because she's done so many cool things. She has ongoing collaborations and work with organizations like UN Women, Pro Women, UN SDG Global, and SDG Israel. And she's a two-time TEDx speaker. So we're going to send some links out to her talks if you haven't already heard them. We'll talk about that today. And she's also keynoted at academic institutions and at organizations, speaking on topics like designing desirable futures on Earth through space architecture, fostering innovative mindsets, finding your competitive edge, impact, economy, diversity and inclusion perspectives, and making unbiased decisions. So without further ado, please help me welcome Michal.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
We are so thrilled to have you, and I can't wait to dive into some of these questions. So like I said, folks, we'll have a chance for you to ask questions, but I'm going to get us started. So my first question, and this is a question that we ask anyone who takes any of our programs to start with, and I love hearing this from speakers because I find there's a really big range in answers, but I'd love to start by hearing from you why you speak.
Well, I never planned on it. My story is a bit unique because the very, very first time I was on stage in my life was in front of 1,600 people doing my very first TEDx talk. So that was the very, very first time. So I dove in right to like the big stage. And it was very, very scary for me, but I felt that I had a very special message that I wanted to share. And I was really scared as I was preparing my talk, thinking about what should I share? What should I talk about? Because the reason that I even got there was because I was living and working in New York, designing skyscrapers. And I just constantly came up with a lot of, I was always the only woman in the room. And I had a lot of interesting stories to talk about, but I wasn't even sure that it's okay to talk about it like that. And I kind of did in my talk. And that was my very, very first experience. And that's why I started, because I really felt that it was worth sharing. Maybe it will help someone, maybe someone will be able to relate. And it kind of snowballed from there.
I'd love to hear that first engagement. So did you say that did someone reach out to you specifically for it? Did you know them? Did they find you? Would love to hear more about how you got that first experience.
For the TED Talk.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, a lot of people ask me, like, how do you get a TED Talk? How do you do it? And I was like, you apply. That's the first thing you should do. And that's what I did. I applied. And I never even thought in a million years that I'm going to get accepted. And a few months later, I got a call and I was like, really? Are you sure? I forgot that I sent that. A friend of mine made me send the application, and I was on the very, very last minute of the very last day of the deadline, and I just did everything really, really quickly. And you have to record yourself in a video, and you have to write what you're going to talk about, and I didn't even know. So everything was very, very last minute, but I did, and I got accepted. So I don't know if it was luck or if my story really resonated or both. But that was the first time. So I really encourage people that want to speak in these kinds of events. First of all, apply. Don't wait for someone else to reach out to you, because a lot of us are pretty like not necessarily we know the right people at the very, very beginning. So this is really the first step, and it's so easy.
Yeah, no, that's such good advice to, seek out the opportunities first. Don't just wait for them to come to you. Do you remember what the application was like? I know that you shared that you had to record a video of yourself. What went into that for folks who maybe haven't looked at applications before?
For TEDx, it's a very unique depending on the production. So TEDx is anyone can create a TEDx event. It costs like, I don't know, $10,000, and you need to follow certain guidelines and rules. But you can create your own event. So there are a lot of academic TEDx events all around the world. Just to every minute or every day, 160 TEDx videos go up on YouTube every single day. So there are a lot of them. So every organization or every production has their own requirements for application. For me, it was I had to have my topic, and I had to record myself and write about myself, write my bio. I didn't have to write the entire thing. I know a lot of TEDx organizations in the US, they do require to have the entire talk already made. After I got accepted, they told me that my video was not that good. And they weren't really sure, because I did it like with a selfie, just holding the phone. I didn't have time to really organize anything. But they said that they really thought there's something there, and that they were interested in my topic, because I did talk about space a little bit and equality, and it's called Equality Lessons from Mars. So the topic and the content got them, not the video.
Yeah. I mean, whatever works, right? There's something there. And I'm curious, how did you decide what topic to choose? And, there's all these topics that you talk about now, as we saw in your bio. How do you continue? Maybe how has that process changed as you've continued to speak since that opportunity?
Well, actually, I always say that my life is divided between before that event and after. So before or leading up to it, I just talked about my experience. I just talked about my life and the very unique opportunities or events that happened to me in that year even. And from being the only woman in the room and the only woman in the construction site in New York, always the developers and the investors are always men, and it was very odd, and I had a lot of interesting experiences. From there, then to decided I want to focus on the connection between architecture and equality, to start research. What is the implication of it? If everything around us is designed by men, something has to have an impact, or it has to have an impact on us and on our experience. And then I just stumbled upon a competition to design a settlement on Mars, and I decided to do it as an equality-driven architecture settlement. Just to imagine if everything was equal, how would our world or our cities would look like? And I just talked about the story of that year, basically. And after that, when I became a more seasoned speaker, I was able to really understand the core of my message and to kind of wrap it up with the connection depending on the event that I'm going to speak at. So it can be more architecture oriented, or more equality oriented, or more space oriented, or more innovation and career entrepreneurship oriented, but the core stays always the same. And I was able to kind of build different talks that I can just pull from depending on the event that I'm invited to.
That's great. It's good to get a little bit of insight into that process. I'm curious, how do you decide where to speak? So if you're seeking out speaking opportunities, what types of things are you looking for? Or if someone reaches out to you, what do you use as a guideline in order to determine whether or not it's a good fit for you?
Well, it really depends on where you're at in your speaking career, because the beginning, you want to get exposure. So the beginning, the main factor is bigger events, big organizations. You're willing to do things pro bono. You're willing to, like I was invited to do another TED talk in the International Space University. At that time, they reached out to me and they invited me. TED organization does not allow to pay the speakers. And of course I said yes, because it's a big exposure. Or when I speak at the UN or with NASA, these types of organizations, I'm willing to do it for free. And in the beginning, I actually looked for those big events because it's a very big platform and big exposure. 2 years ago, or almost 2 years ago, I did also another event that COVID, we talked about it before we went on. There was an event by a space foundation called Explore Mars, and it was supposed to be in Washington, D.C. And they invited me, and they said that they're not paying for it. Everyone is doing it voluntarily because they have like an audience that can reach total, including online. It was before COVID, around 100,000 people. And I said, of course. And I was planning to go, and I had my ticket, and then COVID started, and everything went online. So it was cheaper for me. It was easier for me. But Elon Musk was on the speaking panel with me. So that was kind of a big deal. And I was really happy that I agreed to do it, even though it was pro bono. And now the events, I'm still always happy to do these types of events. I'm always happy to do also events that are targeting young women to get into STEM and STEAM professions. That's something that's always very interesting to me and close to my heart. And I also really love to go to speak at creative tech companies. Those are very interesting audiences. Usually we talk about innovation, we talk about creative thinking. Sometimes we do workshops, sometimes we do hackathons. And those are very interesting events for me. And of course, it's also good in terms of monetizing it, because these big companies or tech companies, they do have budgets for these types of things. But this is something that I wasn't able to do at the very beginning.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to hear more about your process for developing your presentations. And, I don't know how much of this was shaped by your first experience with TED and the guidance that they might have given you. So I'm curious too if there's been evolution over time, but what is your process like from, okay, I'm going to speak at this place, or I have this idea I want to speak about, to, getting to the part where you're actually presenting?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Today I had an event or a workshop about building a presentation and building a pitch when you're trying to pitch a business or a product or something like that. And the shorter the presentation, the harder the work. If you have an hour to speak, it's more, you can be more free with it. You know that you can add a sentence, forget something, not gonna matter. Whereas the shorter the presentation, you have to prepare longer. So for my TED Talk, which was about 12 minutes, I prepared for 3 months. And I wrote everything down. I memorized everything. I knew every sentence, every word, every intonation, and every gesture of my body. So I was really like dancing on stage, and I practiced. I wrote it for about 2 months, and then the last month was only practice and rehearsing. And I did it like 10 times a day until it kind of flew from me. And I still, 3 years later, I can say I can still do it, I think. But since then, I was able to really, as comfortable as you are with what you're saying, it's better to actually not write these things down and to really just talk and tell your story. And now I'm rarely writing my talks down. I just prepare the outline. One of my topics that I talk about is storytelling. So I always make sure that I have a certain curve, a certain way of creating my talk. So at the beginning, I can just present who I am, what's the situation, what's happening, what's the problem, what's the issue, and kind of building the story to like a climax, and then kind of giving some more information as we go down, and kind of use the same type of frame for all of my talks, the shorter ones and the longer ones. But I really do try to just talk about it without memorizing anything, because it makes me be more at ease as I'm speaking.
Yeah, that's great advice. And do you get nervous when you speak?
I do. It's
Yeah.
getting better. At the very, very first time, I didn't even know how my body will react. I didn't know if my voice will disappear. I didn't know if my knees will lock. I didn't know what's gonna happen, because I'd never been on stage before. So what I did was I went on the street. I have a boulevard near my house, and stood on a bench and started talking, like in Hyde Park in London, or a lot of places you see on the in LA on the boardwalk, I think. And I just talked like a crazy person in front of people, or I heard people that do it at the airport.
Were you rehearsing your talk, or you were just talking about anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rehearsing my talk randomly. And that those people on the street are not people that wanted to hear me. The people that came, and you always have to remember, the people that come to hear you speak, they know that they are going to, they know that you're there, they're there for you. But the people on the street were not there for me. So that's even harder. So I'm like, if I can manage that, maybe it will help me with the nerves on stage. And what I did before my talk, there were like 8 talks and I was 6th. So we had a break in the middle. So I went around the crowd, and nobody knew who I was. So I just kind of felt the energy, and it kind of charged me up. And I always, before every talk, I do a few jumps, and I do my power pose. It really works. And that's what I did. And then when I got on stage, I realized that I love being on stage. And the bigger the crowd, the more comfortable I feel. So that kind of helps me with the nerves, but still I do the power pose before every single talk and every single event.
I love a good power pose.
Yeah, that's very good.
How has that changed with presenting online? We were talking a little bit about this before, some of the benefits of being able to not have to travel and reach a global audience, but especially as you mentioned, you love speaking in front of such a big group, and got some of your energy from talking to people. What has that been like now presenting online?
Well, there are, 2 sides to the story. On one side, you're able to reach more diverse and bigger crowds all over the world, and you're able to be at two places in the world in the same day, which is amazing. But it's harder because you are not able usually to see the faces of the people that you're talking to. When you are sharing a presentation, you are only able to see yourself, even if some people in the audience are with their camera open, you're not able to see them. And in the beginning, it was very, very hard for me. It felt like I'm talking to myself for an hour, and that's hard. So I usually ask people to have their cameras on, and I usually try to have a few screens just to see some, at least I see one person, and I'm able to see if they're nodding their head, I'm able to say another word about that topic. Or if they are bored, I can just jump to the next thing. So I think it's important still to try to manage that connection with the audience. And another thing that I started to do is do like reset questions in the middle of my talks, just to make sure that people are with me, that people are awake. And it's a lot more game on intonation and energy, because it's harder for people to concentrate.
Oh, Michal, I think we lost you for a second. Michal? Let's see. I don't know if it's frozen just on my end or on everyone else's. Maybe you can share in the chat.
It's frozen. Yeah, it's frozen.
Yeah, it's also frozen for me.
Okay. Let's see if we can get her back. Sorry, y'all. This is one of the challenges, the flip side of the remote, sometimes the technical difficulties. Oh, okay, I think she hopped off. Maybe she'll just be back. As she's rejoining, folks, if you can start to think of your questions, I still have a handful more that we will be asking Michal, but I would love to hear your questions. You came here and we want to hear what's important to you. So start to put those in the chat, or you can use the raise hand function. Hi, Michal, are you back?
Yeah, something happened to my connection. I'm
Okay.
sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. I wasn't sure if you were just frozen for me or someone else, so or everyone, but we are really glad to have you back. So you were sharing that it's helpful to have, someone that you can still look at, that you have to pay more attention to your tone and your intonation. One of the things that you mentioned, I'm curious to hear a little bit more about, is you mentioned that you have some of these like reset questions, maybe that you do like partial way through for the audience. I'd love to hear an example of that, or what is something that you might ask or do.
Specific
Yeah.
to space. But whenever I talk about, in all my talks, I get to the topic of space at a certain point. And when I talk about Mars, Mars has very interesting conditions. And one of the things that Mars has is Mars day is 24 hours and 40 minutes a day. So it has extra 40 minutes. So I usually like to ask, and it kind of became my global research with my audience. I usually like to ask everyone, what would they do if they had extra 40 minutes? And maybe we should do it now, because the way that I do it usually, if you don't mind, is to have everyone type the answer in the chat, but not hit send. And I will count you down and you'll hit send all at the same time. Because maybe, I don't know, we're a small group. I don't know if it will prove itself today, but a lot of times I get one answer only. So what would you do if you had extra 40 minutes a day, if you were living on Mars? Type down your questions. I'll give you a few seconds. And when I'll count you down, hit send, so we'll be able to see your questions. And Danny, I'll answer also.
Okay, I have mine. It's just one answer, huh? I had a couple.
One answer, just a few words. Yeah, right? I hope you all are ready. So I'm counting you down. So 3, 2, 1. Interesting. So rest, sleep, write, painting, photography, creativity, watch an extra episode of series, exercise, and take more walks. You're amazing. I can tell you're a creative group, because usually the answer that I get is sleep, 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 sleep. No matter the age, no matter the location in the world. And it's always kind of depressing to me that everyone will use those extra precious moments for sleep. Although it's important, I'm not saying it's not.
I
So
almost wrote
nothing
read
against
and then I
those.
changed it to sleep.
I mean, yeah. So sleep is something that most people say. And
Yeah.
usually this question kind of maybe as you saw right now, wakes people up in the
Yeah.
middle of the talk. Of
I love that. That's such a good technique. Thank you for sharing that with us.
course.
I'm curious, especially since we just had a little technical difficulty. One of the questions I love to ask, because this is a big fear of people, is what if something goes wrong, right? So either if you're presenting in person or presenting remotely, have you ever had a situation where something went wrong? And I would love to hear a little bit more about what happened and what you did about it or what you learned from it.
So I apologize. I keep on going back to the first TED talk, but everything that could go wrong there went wrong. So
Oh, no.
I was on stage and I had a mic, and I had the little mic thing on the back of my my shirt, and I was wearing like a big long kimono over it. And something got caught up there in the first, so only 12 minutes I had to talk, but the first, I think maybe 3 minutes, there were big explosions from the mic that everyone could hear. And I was talking, but I kept on looking with the corner of my eye to like the backstage to wait for them to stop me, to tell me to start over because it was so bad. But because I rehearsed so much, the words just came out of my mouth and I was able to think and speak about two different things at the same time. And it was insane. And I just kept on going and kind of worked itself out. And then when I got the video, you can hear it and it was awful. So I paid a lot of money to a lot of good sound people to kind of work on that when it launched on YouTube and on the TED global TED site.
I was gonna say, I never heard it.
So yeah, so it was very, very bad. And I kind of think that what you do is, one, you should really, rehearsing really helps for those moments. So you're able to just continue without paying attention to that. I wouldn't suggest stopping in these types of situations unless the audience is like, it's very, very noticeable and you're allowed to, and you're not in that kind of time limitation like a TED talk, a TED talk. But yeah, so things like that happen. And I think as the more you practice, the more you have experience, the less you get stressed out about it. And maybe you'll also be able to have more room to improvise and to just talk. It's a good opportunity to talk to the audience. I mean, now when I froze, I saw you froze and I didn't know that it took me a second to understand that it was my computer and my internet. So I started to talk to everyone. I didn't understand why they're not answering me. I started to talk to
What a
everyone.
rude audience.
Yeah.
That's a great technique. Yeah, I love how you find all these opportunities to engage with your audience, especially even on virtual calls, because I think that's something I know a lot of speakers struggle with is, how do I know if my audience is paying attention? Like, how do I keep them engaged? And these are a lot of great techniques that you've shared. So thank you.
Yeah, and I also would suggest, I mean, a lot of times people, it's very interesting to know what people are thinking as you're speaking, right? So this is a really good opportunity to just ask, how's it going? What do you think? Is it interesting for you? What was the one thing that caught your attention? So I think maybe use these types of opportunities to really engage and ask questions that you don't normally get to ask your audience. And it's very informal, so it's comfortable for everyone.
Yeah, and I love that you shared that you're able to do this research, and then that can probably build on to future talks of the work that you're doing. As I had the chance to survey, hundreds or thousands of people, and you did that, during your talk.
I actually counted, and I reached over 200,000 people that I was able to reach with my talks so far.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's a good lead into my next question. I wanted to hear about how public speaking has impacted your career. And it sounds like a lot, especially since you talk about the before TED times and after. But yeah, I'd love if you can share a little bit about what type of impact it's had for you.
A big one. I mean, I think that I never planned on being a public speaker as a substantial part of my career. But once I started, I realized that that's a very good way to network. That's a very good way to let people know what you do, let people know what you're up to, what are your latest projects. A very good way to get your message across. if you want to change the world and help people, it's a very, very good way. And a lot of things come out from these types of events and speaking opportunities. So I kind of now take advantage of it. I really love doing it. And the more I do it, it's easier, and you don't have to prepare as much before. So you're able to reach many people and to really leverage it for surveys for your work, for research. You have the opportunity to speak to a lot of people. So it's really always important to know who are you speaking to. One, to create your presentation, but two, also to know who did you speak to, what were their ages, demographic, to get feedback from them afterwards. So it's really part of my work. It's very integrated and not a separate part. So yeah.
We have a question in the chat that I'll bring in, since it says it's building on the question, from Erica. Thank you, Erica. How much of your time do you dedicate to public speaking and preparation, and how do you balance it with other responsibilities?
So I'll tell you a little secret. Depending on where you're speaking at, and I know that it's not common to talk about money, but I will, because women don't like to do it, and they should. So speaking can get you really good income. And what I realized is that since I'm doing something that is very, very niche, there aren't many space architects in the world. And I have to really educate the market, basically, to explain to them that they need me as an architect, as a professional. I don't get a lot of projects. And also most of my space projects are research projects. I didn't build in space just yet. But I learned that from speaking, and if I'll invest my time, and it's a lot of time to invest in it. It takes a lot, like for me to build a presentation, it can take a couple of months or even more, just one presentation. But once you have it, it's an asset that you have that you can then go on and sell. And you can reach a point where you can do 3, 4 big keynotes a month. That means you're actually working 4 days a week for money. And the rest of a month, not a week, a month. And the rest of the month you have for yourself to build your business, to build whatever you want to build without the burden of money or of getting paid. And that can really sustain you if you want to build something, if you want to build a company or create something, write a blog, write a book. That's something that really can potentially help you do that, because after you finish, or after you become more comfortable with building the content, you get something in your hands that you can then just share with people with very, very minimal extra work on your end. So that's something that you can really, really use. Yeah. So today I have at least 1 or 2 speaking engagements a week. Usually it's 1 pro bono, 1 paid. And I usually don't invest a lot I usually adjust the presentations to the audience that I'm going to speak to. But since I did so many into so many types of groups, I have like earlier today, a woman called me and she said, "You have to help me. My speaker bailed. She's sick. I have a presentation on Sunday, which is in a few days, to 500 ninth graders, girls. And it's going to be 30 minutes and it's kind of like an inspiration talk. And can you help me out?" And I'm like, okay, sure. It happens that I did a presentation for ninth graders 2 months ago in a high school in my hometown. And so it's pretty easy for me to I just have to adjust it in terms of time. And no matter which event it is, I always time myself. So I do take the same amount of time of the talk of the event beforehand to myself, time myself, see I'm good with everything, see that the presentation is good, the logos are there, all those things. I do invest, so it's a couple of hours, but that's about it. But then if I have to really create a new presentation, that's a very time-consuming thing, but I think it's really worth it in the long run.
Yeah, it's an investment. That's great. I'm really glad that you brought up the conversation about money, because I agree it's important and not talked about often enough. And I'm going to throw in a question from there that does come up a lot from folks that I work with is, how do you start that conversation about compensation? I think a lot of, especially women and non-binary folks might, if someone doesn't bring it up, might, feel uncomfortable mentioning it. And so I'm curious if you can share like either advice or what you do to start that conversation about compensation.
So usually I just ask, like I ask a lot of questions about the event and things like that. And then before the end of the call, I asked, what is your budget? Not, do you have a budget? What is your budget? And then if they don't have a budget, it's on them to tell me and to explain why I should do it for free. It's not on me to say, well, I should get paid. No, I think it should be obvious that the speaker should get paid. That's your job. You're there to do work. It's you taking time out of your day. It's a whole different conversation how you price your talks. But the fact that you should be compensated, I think, should be basic. And that's the question that I ask, what is your budget? And then when they throw it back to me, either they tell me their budget or they say, well, we don't know, what can you send us some quotes or something, like how much it costs. So and the next step is I usually give them a few options. Even if they ask me for 60-minute talk with 15 minutes for Q&A, I always give a 40 minutes or a 45-minute talk or a 30-minute talk, a price for 60 minutes, a price for a 90-minute workshop. So they will be able to see usually what they ask me, I put in the middle. So they will feel that, they have the option to take something cheaper. They choose to take this one. If they don't want to pay as much, they know that if their budget is lower, they'll get a shorter talk. But they are not paying the higher price of something longer that they didn't actually want. So that's kind of like a behavioral psychology trick to make them feel that they chose how much they are going to pay me instead of me making them pay me a certain price. Yeah. So that's kind of my trick. Not always working, but
It's a good technique, and that's great advice. I love the framing of putting the onus on them rather than on you to have to look at their budget and say, we have one or we should have one.
Yeah, I mean, today, the event that they asked me to talk to the 500 girls, they don't have a budget. But since I framed it like that, what is your budget? And I let her speak. I even in the moment of silence, right after she said, well, we don't have a budget, I didn't say anything. And that's important. A lot of times we fill in silences. And because I didn't speak, she continued to talk. And she said, well, actually, next month, I'm going to transition to a new job. And then I'll be able to have a lot of budgets for speaking engagements. And I'll definitely keep you in mind. I'm like, okay, win-win. I'm going to talk about to girls, and it's something that I'm passionate about anyways. But also I'm able to create a connection here that can potentially lead to pay talks. And she understands that I should pay. Like it's something that I put in there. So yeah.
Thank you. We have time for a couple more questions. There's another one in the chat from Kaori. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry if I didn't. Do you have any advice for using PowerPoint as a tool for talks, or would you recommend not using PowerPoint?
Well, it really depends. I'm assuming that you're all designers as well. So as designers, I think visuals are a big thing. So for me, usually I do have a presentation. I usually have only visuals, very, very minimal text, if any. So I do really like to use presentations. And I also think that's a tool to sell myself and what I'm doing and my work, because we are in a very visual field. So I do think that if you have a chance, use it. And it really varies, because the TED only allows you, like, I think 10 slides or 15 slides or something like that, which is very limited. I have talks that I do about space architecture that are an hour long, and I have about 80, 90 slides. Like, 5 seconds each slide, and it creates an impact because each slide is full bleed, no text, and they just get to, I'm bringing people into my world kind of with that, and they don't feel that it's a lot because it doesn't have any text. And I can play with like the color scheme of the entire journey that I'm taking them. So I really use it as a tool to convey my message. So yeah, I like it. I like to use presentations, but again, imagine it always depends on what you want to get out of that talk. So it's not, when people invite you to do a talk, it's not just you serving the audience, it's also what you want to get out of it. And if it's a Zoom talk, you have to take into consideration the fact that they will not see your face. They will see your face very, very small, and they will see the presentation. So I don't know what it is for, but maybe it's something to think about. Maybe you want to use it to start the presentation 5 minutes in and not right in the beginning. So you can play around with that. So yeah, I'm all for it, because specifically for designers.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Folks, if you have any other questions, drop them in the chat now. This is your chance. I'm going to go into 2 final questions that I have for Michal. So we talked about how public speaking has impacted your career. I'd love to know if you have any specific, or maybe not broad, future public speaking goals. What do you want to do next?
Well, my most exciting one, which I'm dreading, it's freaking me out because it's different than anything that I've ever done before, is a talk for NASA. So NASA invited me to talk to 100 human factors specialists and researchers, and to talk to them about what I do. Now, it's completely different because these are scientists, these are engineers, these are fact people. I can't just throw around, stats without saying, well, this research has been done by this person at this year, and it was done on 100 people or 1,000 people. I have to be very, very specific in that. And I'm not used to it because I know that I'm basing my content on actual factual research, but I don't talk about it as I present. So I need to really, prepare this well. Probably I'm not gonna say all these things, all those details, but I have to be prepared in case they ask me. So that's a big one that I'm really, really waiting for. Next week is Israeli Space Week. Usually we have 2 space weeks. We have the international one, which is in October, and we have the Israeli one, which is now, which is adjacent to the Columbia disaster that our only astronaut died when the shuttle came back from space to Earth, and it burned in the atmosphere. So around that date, we have the Israeli Space Week, and I have a lot of events, and usually it's a lot of bar talks. So we literally go to bars, people come in, they buy their ticket, they get a free beer with their ticket, and we sit at the bar and we talk about space, which is the best combination, alcohol and space. So I have a lot of those in this upcoming week, which is very, very exciting. And there are a lot of big things like that. I'm also excited. I mean, who knows, the next event that I talked about that I did, that Elon Musk was there as well. It happens every year. This year it's supposed to be live. Maybe I'll get to go there. Maybe I'll get to meet him and other people, interesting people. So when I have those things, I'm mostly focused and excited about the other speakers and who am I gonna meet in those events. So yeah.
That's a good thing to think about too. I know that you shared you should know your reason for wanting to speak at the event, and that's a great one to think about too, is who else is there and who might you want to
By the way, when I choose my the places, the conferences that I go to as a audience, I usually choose conferences that interest the people that I'm interested in, not topics that I want to listen to, but topics that my investors will want to listen to, or the developers will want to listen to, and I will be able to catch those people. And I focus less on the actual people that are speaking on stage. And I always have, and that's something that I try to do also with my talks, to give value that they will not be able to find online. Because if I'm able to find your content online, word for word, or something around that content, I'll feel kind of in this day and age that I'm wasting my time to actually get dressed, leave the house, go somewhere. So I always look for value to get from speakers, and always make sure that I give value to the audience as well.
That's great. Carrie, that's my final question is the one that you put there. So I'm going to save that one and go to Erica's, and then we'll wrap up with that last one. Erica wants to know about developing workshops. So do you have any suggestions on how to create engaging workshops, or maybe anything to share about the difference when you're approaching a workshop versus a talk?
So first of all, workshops are an amazing tool as a business person to get more talks. Basically, a lot of times, if you see that there's a lot of engagement, or the client wants to have 30 minutes or an hour of Q&A, you're saying, okay, let's break it down. Let's create a workshop. Let's do a 30-minute talk, and then an activity for everyone. And maybe I can come again, and maybe we can do a 2-time or 3-time thing. And that's a way to kind of create more income for you, and more talks for yourself. And it's a very different kind of approach for workshops, because you really have to make sure that everyone is engaged, everyone is awake. I try usually to break it down into a few sections. In each section, people should do something. It's not just me talking in the beginning and then just them at the end. It has to be kind of mixed with different durations. I give workshops between 90 minutes, 3 hours, and the longest one was 6 hours online. The 6 hours one was, and it's different. It's because they go away from you, and then you have to pull them back to you. And a lot of times, something good in workshops is making them present, because once they present, they kind of sympathize or empathize with what you're going through as a speaker, and they will be more engaged for you subconsciously, kind of, because they have to present as well. So always give them time also to present what they're thinking, what they're working on. So really to break it down, I think, to small portions of speaking and activity. Speaking and activity, I think, is the best way to go.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. You have shared so much wonderful advice throughout this time together. So thank you so much. And the last question that I want to ask that Carrie actually put in the chat as well is, we have some folks that are new to speaking, and I'm wondering if you have maybe your number one piece of advice for them. Maybe it was something that someone either shared with you, your favorite piece of advice, or something you've just learned along the way, but what would you share for new speakers?
Well, I have two things.
Okay, great.
First one, and the most important one, is when you're speaking, you are the master. You are the person with the knowledge. Nobody else knows usually what you are going to say. You are the one that is the expert. So one, they will not know if you mess up. Only you will know that. And two, you really have to be comfortable with what you're saying. But once you get to that position, you have to own it, and you should own it. You should enjoy it, because really everyone is there to hear you. And something that my mentor for the first talk that I did told me is, think about yourself as a vessel for your content to the people, your audience. It's not about you as a person, it's about what you're saying, and it's for them. So the better you do, the better you're serving your audience. And it kind of puts yourself as a person, as an individual, kind of outside of that equation, and takes like it feels more like it's kind of like spiritual, but it's called more like a calling, and something that you do for them instead of to them, which is it can make a big difference. And the second thing is also, or on the same topic, is if someone asks you a question, a lot of people are scared of interruptions and questions. And if someone will ask me something that I will not know how to answer, it's really okay to say, amazing question, I have to check and I'll get back to you. Please connect with me on LinkedIn or something like that. And one, it makes people understand that they can connect to you on LinkedIn, and it's an opportunity, or on Instagram or whatever. But it's okay to say that you don't know. And it's a good question and you just didn't think about that. And you don't always have to have all the answers. And in order to get your first talk, I think a friend of mine does this, and I think she does it very, very well. She started out with home talks. Kind of, she invites a group of people and she gives a talk, and then they give her feedback. And then she opened it up to communities on Facebook, and then she started charging for it. And then it kind of gets bigger and bigger, and you get more comfortable with what you're saying. And I think that's a really good way to start. And also just applying. I mean, I'm all for just starting big, like what I did. So apply to TED Talks. It will just make you push yourself, even if you're not really, really ready. I really encourage that.
Awesome. So much great advice there. That one piece of advice turned into many, and I love all of it. So please join me in thanking Michal. That was so wonderful. I really thank you for your time, your generosity, and all of your advice. We're so excited for what you're doing next, and so happy to have you in the Women Talk Design community. Thank you to everyone who attended. You asked great questions. I encourage you, we just have a few minutes at the end, but if you want to stick around, I'm going to open breakout rooms in just a minute. I think it's a really great opportunity to be able to say hello to other folks that are here. I have some discussion topics that you can use, because I know it can be hard to be like, well, what should we talk about? I'm going to bring everyone back in just the minute beforehand. If you do have to go, we would love to hear from you. Please share your feedback. And again, help me thank Michal. We'll be following up with some links so that you can continue to follow along with this story.
Yeah, so much. It was fun to be here. I'll stay here for a couple more minutes if anyone is too shy to ask something in the bigger group. So I'll be here for just a few minutes. And thank you so much for coming. It's been great. I'm happy to share everything.
Thanks.